From humble beginnings to the best game of its time, BioShock made waves when it was released over 9 years ago. With its one-of-a-kind underwater setting, expansive lore, eclectic cast, and dozens of literary and historical references, the game is truly entitled to the sweat of its creators' brows. In honor of the recent release of BioShock the Collection, we're diving deep into the development process of the game and its sequel, BioShock 2. Hi, I'm Joey with the Leaderboard, and whether you're a diehard fan or just wondering what all the fuss is about, would you kindly stick around? Get this? Because we're here to give you 107 facts about BioShock. Let's get started. Fact 1. BioShock is a first-person shooter sci-fi horror game developed by Irrational Games, known then as 2K Boston, that was released in August 2007 for Microsoft Windows and Xbox 360 platforms. It was published by 2K Games. Number 2. It was inspired a bit by the System Shock series because although it has no story correlation, it was made by much of the same team who brought similar elements into it. Number 3. Where System Shock was a stylistically cyberpunk game, BioShock has a more biopunk, diesel punk aesthetic, a genre which often emphasizes synthetic biology, human enhancement, and the manipulation of DNA. Sounds like fun. Number 4. BioShock, like System Shock 2, was originally going to be a role-playing game, but there were so many prerequisites for everything, and the programmers felt like gamers had to do way too much just to get to the more interesting parts of the game. Number 5. The project actually had almost no money when it was starting up. The team's efforts went to making the best game they could for as cheap as possible. Luckily, the game became a huge success. Number 6. The original premise for BioShock set it on a space station that had been overrun by genetic mutants. This concept drew on B-movie sci-fis and included enemy names like Eelman and Jellyman. Eventually, this idea was scrapped because, did you hear what I just said? Number 7. The idea to set BioShock in an underwater city came from the necessity of isolation in the storyline. The creators wanted the game to take place somewhere removed from conventional society, and underwater cities hadn't been explored in video games yet. Number 8. The protagonist of the game is Jack, who, for the few lines he has, is voiced by Nate Wells, an employee at Irrational Games who helped design the Big Daddies. I guess you could call him a jack of all trades. Number 9. The only real glimpse of him in the game is not a clear image. It wasn't until the BioShock Infinite DLC, Burial at Sea, that a full model was made for him. Number 10. Jack's sweater was inspired by Dorian Hart, an employee of the design team who always wore one like it. Number 11. At the beginning of the game, a business card for Irrational Games could be found inside of Jack's wallet during the plane sequence. Number 12. An unused passport was found in the BioShock game files, which says Jack's last name is Wynand, and that he's from Overlook, Kansas. Many people believe this last name is a reference to Gail Wynand, a character from Ayn Rand's novel, The Fountainhead. Number 13. The lead designer of Irrational Games, Bill Gardner, can be seen in the family photo in Jack's wallet. Bill's the one in the middle. Number 14. An unused audio clip reveals that the pilot's name is Captain Cal Franklin. Good to know who you're flying with. Number 15. The plane crash in the opening was based off of the premise of the TV show Lost. The sequence was meant to help players learn more about Jack at the start of the game. For instance, he doesn't like plane crashes. Number 16. According to creator Ken Levine, there was originally going to be a gunfight at the lighthouse, but it was ultimately cut from the game. Number 17. That whale scene in the bathysphere sequence was originally meant to be the Proving Grounds Museum, but once the swim animation was added, it looked so good that they decided to move it to the beginning of the game to increase the impact of that first underwater view. Number 18. Rapture's founder, Andrew Ryan, is named after Ayn Rand, the objectivist and anti-communist author of Atlas Shrugged. BioShock draws a lot of elements from Ayn Rand's works, so stay tuned for more references. Number 19. Andrew Ryan and the creation of Rapture were heavily inspired by the life of John D. Rockefeller. BioShock creator Ken Levine saw the Art Deco style of Rockefeller Center, a style not often seen in games, and heard the story of how its construction was self-funded by Rockefeller himself, and used those as influences for BioShock. Number 20. Other sources of influence include the book 1984 and the movie Logan's Run, both of which are stories about utopias gone wrong as a result of human flaws. Number 21. More Ayn Rand allusions. Atlas is named for her novel Atlas Shrugged, and Fontaine is named for her novel The Fountainhead. Those two are a bit more obvious, but they still go over some people's heads. Number 22. The Who is Atlas posters are also a reference to the iconic line in Atlas Shrugged, Who is John Galt? Number 23. Atlas originally had a southern accent, until game testers responded poorly to it, with one person comparing him to a lecherous Colonel Sanders. Nobody trusted Atlas, so they recast and re-recorded all of his lines with the current Irish accent.
Now, would you kindly find a crowbar or something?
Just months before the game's release. Number 24. Atlas's line, I am not a liberator, is based off the quote by the Argentinian liberator Che Guevara. Number 25. The design of the bouncer Big Daddies are based off 19th century French diving suits. Number 26. There was an additional Big Daddy that was cut from the game prior to its release called a Slow Pro FUM, which stands for slow moving, projectile shooting, F'd up melee. Its design was eventually repurposed into BioShock 2's Rumbler. Number 27. The dynamic between Big Daddies and Little Sisters was inspired by ants. Ken Levine was fascinated by the worker-gatherer relationship of ants, and how clearly defined and identifiable those roles are. Number 28. The Little Sisters were not always the 30% cute, 70% creepy little girls we know today. Original designs included crabs and slugs, but they weren't sympathetic enough. and overall couldn't convey emotion the way a human can. Enter the cute, creepy girls. Number 29. The design of the final Little Sisters was inspired by the Grady twins from the horror classic The Shining. Number 30. One of the most notorious pre-Little Sister designs was a dog in a wheelchair. The design team wanted to draw something really pathetic looking, and lead animator Sean Robinson said it later became a running joke and something that he's still embarrassed about. Number 31. They even had a design of the Little Sisters that made them have a face resembling Gollum from The Lord of the Rings. They wanted to put an old, ugly face on a little girl's dirty and bloody body and have her mostly bald with only some patches of hair. Really glad they didn't pick this one. I'll be keeping the lights on for a while. Number 32. At one point in the development process, there was not an option to save Little Sisters. The team added it in to create a moral dilemma for the players, leading to the alternate endings. Number 33. So why are there only Little Sisters and no Little Brothers? Well, in the Deco Devolution art book, there actually is a design for Little Brothers, and it's revealed that while they were explored, they never made it into the game. They would have been seen in the inner Persephone therapy rooms. Number 34. The first Splicer ever design was called Stitchy and was fully conceived, animated, voiceovered, and placed in-game until the team finally realized that the model was not good. Lead artist Sean Robertson called it the worst abortion that Irrational has ever made. Oof, that's one way to put it. Number 35. Before moving on to more human-looking Splicer designs, the team created a lot in the style of Scooby-Doo monsters. Basically, over-the-top, grotesque designs that were just not relatable. Eventually, they decided to switch to humans to evoke more empathy in the antagonists. Number 36. There was an early demo in 2003 available to play on Xbox that showed the Scooby-Doo-esque monsters. The setting back then was still underwater, but it looked a lot like a space station and everything was pretty clean and Star Trek-y. Before that, there were even plans to have it based on a tropical island populated with Nazis. Not gonna lie, that's pretty scary too. Number 37. The Splicers' faces are based on 1940s mugshot photos from San Francisco. How did the design team find these mugshots? Well, they found a book of them on good old eBay. Number 38. The Waiters Splicers are based on World War I veteran Walter Yo. Yo received reconstructive facial surgery by the so-called father of plastic surgery, Sir Harold Gillies. Number 39. The second gameplay demo showed Houdini Splicers in the medical pavilion, but they never made it into the final version. I guess they performed their famous disappearing act? Number 40. There were some more bumps in the road besides character changes. Some development issues occurred due to the expansion of Irrational's team from 6 to 60 people. There was a lack of communication between departments that created a lot of strife between employees down the line, causing many of them to leave after the game was done. Number 41. The game's lead designer, Paul Hellquist, often butted heads with Ken Levine, so he was left out of some key design meetings. He vented his frustration in his design of the medical pavilion. See? Good art sometimes comes from a dark place. Number 42. In order to show the need for unity between departments, level designer Jean-Paul LeBreton and artist Hogarth de la Plante teamed up and created the tea garden area of the game, which served as proof that better communication made for a better game. Ken loved it and showed it off as an example to the rest of the team. Number 43. The reason that BioShock employs a lot of storytelling through audio files is so that the player can keep full control over what's happening without being disrupted by sudden cutscenes. Number 44. Originally, the gene bank was called Plasma Quick. It was changed after developers found that playtesters were avoiding these machines because they were unsure of what they did, so they made it really clear. Number 45. At one point, the team wanted Jack to mutate more and more with increased plasmid use, creating a moral dilemma for the player about whether they're willing to become a splicer to survive or keep their humanity at the cost of less safety. But the feature didn't even make it to the final cut because you can't even see Jack anyway. There's no humanity to get attached to. Number 46. The clown on the Circus of Values machines is actually a royalty-free image that the developers found. Number 47. There's a sign at the bathysphere entrance that says Taurus Hall. This is a reference to Jack Torrance, protagonist of The Shining. They really like that movie, huh? Number 48. Arcadia is named after the phrase spoken by Death, "Et in Arcadia ego," which means even in Arcadia I exist. Andrew Ryan was originally scripted to say the phrase before releasing poison into the area, but the line was cut. It's too bad. Sounds like a badass moment. Number 49. In the Worldly Winery at the Arcadia Farmers Market, there's a cheese wheel with several bullet holes in front of it, a reference to the video game classic Pac-Man. Number 50. At one point in time, there was going to be a Rapture zoo in Fort Frolic. It was ultimately cut, and very little is known about it, except that there would have been an elephant. The real question? How'd they get it down there? Houdini? Number 51. Near the beginning of the game, Atlas tells Jack that he has a wife and son named Moira and Patrick. However, in Fort Frolic, you can see posters for a musical called Patrick and Moira, foreshadowing the fact that Atlas is lying about who he is. Come on, Atlas. Poster? That's the best you can do? Number 52. The code 0451 is used to open a locked closet in Twilight Field's funeral homes. Employees of Looking Glass Studios, or those partnered with them, always included this number in their games as a reference and small tribute to Fahrenheit 451, the famous sci-fi book about a dystopian society that burned books. The number appears in System Shock and Deus Ex as well. Number 53. If you go to the room with the words "Would you kindly" written on the wall and look at the table beneath the writing, you'll see a photo from a security camera of Jack's face. It's not the best quality, but you can tell it's him by that that god-awful sweater. Number 54. The method of mind control was inspired by movies like The Manchurian Candidate, which required a key phrase in its process. The team couldn't seem to pick a good enough phrase until Ken Levine created the now iconic "Would you kindly" while looking at BioShock marketing materials that contained quotes like "Would you kill people, even innocent people, to survive?" Number 55. The whole sound palette of BioShock was based off of real recordings of very old antique machines. Sound designers sampled an old MS-20 and an aged antique 1970s synthesizer for the scenes within the science lab, kicking it old school. Number 56. Voice actors recorded in LA, Boston, and New York with over 40 to 50 different sessions. There was a broad range of characters, and the team had to make sure the voice actors were not projecting their personalities too much or coming off as cartoonish. Number 57. Some BioShock numbers for you. There's a total of 30 licensed tracks in the game. As of 2010, 4 million copies of BioShock have been sold. The final budget of the game ended up being $25 million. Number 58. BioShock has won several awards, including Game of the Year, Best Xbox 360 Game, and Best Original Score at the 2007 Spike TV Video Game Awards. It also won the 2007 BAFTA Best Game Award and was selected by X-Play as Game of the Year, Best Original Soundtrack, Best Writing/Story, and Best Art Direction. Number 59. Christoph Hartmann, the president of 2K Games, believes that BioShock could be a franchise of Star Wars proportions, having up to 5 sequels. Well, we're only at 3 games now, and Star Wars 8 is due soon, so get cracking, BioShock. Number 60. A Big Daddy actually appeared in an episode of The Simpsons. In the episode The Food Wife, Homer and the kids go to the expensive Electronic Entertainment Expo, and the bouncer design can be seen in a gallery with other big video game characters. Number 61. A novel was written by John Shirley called BioShock Rapture in 2011. It's a prequel to the game that follows multiple characters during the rise and fall of Rapture. Number 62. There was talk of a film adaptation for a while, but it didn't work out in the end. It would have been directed by Gore Verbinski, written by John Logan, and shot in a similar style to 300 using a lot of green screens, but it suffered from various budgetary issues over time, until finally they pulled the plug after 2009's Watchmen was a financial flop. The studio didn't want to risk any more loss. Number 63. BioShock was followed up 3 years later by a sequel, BioShock 2, which was developed by subsidiary of Rational Games, 2K Marin, and released in February 2010. Number 64. When BioShock 2 was first announced, there was some confusion about whether or not it was subtitled Sea of Dreams. Early reports seemed to say yes, later reports said that the subtitle had been dropped. Even later reports said it was never a subtitle in the first place and just the name of that trailer. Number 65. Ken Levine was not involved in the creation of BioShock 2 at all, with Jordan Thomas stepping in as the project director. Jordan had to absorb all the information about the game to make sure he didn't cause any crazy plot holes or contradictions. Number 66. The first big concern the developers had when making BioShock 2 was figuring out where to go with the story, while still finding a balance between reintroducing a familiar world and adding new terrifying elements into the picture. Number 67. BioShock 2 is set 10 years after the original. One way that the team demonstrated this was by adding in ambient creaks and groans to show Rapture's age. They also added sounds that raise in frequency as the game progresses, which is symbolic of the ever-growing insanity of the city. Number 68. The protagonist of BioShock 2 is Subject Delta, the fourth Big Daddy prototype. He was originally designed as the first ever Big Daddy, but the team later revised him to be the fourth existing one, but the first ever Big Daddy to successfully pair with Little Sister. Now that's progress. Number 69. The original motives for Subject Delta, also known as Johnny Topside, are a little unclear. It's known that he came upon Rapture while scuba diving, but according to Jordan Thomas, it's up to the player to decide whether he was a scavenger or explorer or something else. Number 70. One of the original concept designs for Subject Delta resembled a WW-1 bomber, including a shark face on the stomach, a blonde woman in a red dress on the forearm, and DF-2-22 on the shoulder. Number 71. The designers intentionally didn't give Subject Delta a name so that the player could personally connect with them, rather than perceive him as a written character like Nathan Drake of Uncharted. Number 72. The audio plays a huge role in making the player feel like a Big Daddy. The sound team not only used heavy footsteps, but also the sound of water drops and heavy impact textures to reinforce who the player is. Number 73. Whereas Jack was being mind-controlled throughout BioShock 1, which was contrary to Andrew Ryan's philosophy on free will, Subject Delta is the ultimate individual. He is unlike anyone else in Rapture, which goes against Sophia Lamb's philosophy on selflessness. Number 74. The extreme stances taken by Andrew Ryan and Sophia Lamb are meant to show players both sides of the ideological spectrum and allow them to contemplate moderation between the two philosophies. A game that wants you to think. Number 75. The phrase "Big Sister is always watching" is a clear allusion to the line "Big Brother is watching" from George Orwell's novel 1984, one of the inspirations for BioShock 1. Number 76. Sophia Lamb was inspired by Fenella Woolgar's Agatha Christie from Doctor Who. In fact, they even got Fenella Woolgar to voice Dr. Lamb. Number 77. In BioShock 1, an audio diary from Yi Su Chung mentions Sinclair, which is actually just a reference to art director Scott Sinclair. However, in BioShock 2, they used it to create Augustus Sinclair. So, Augustus is named after Scott. Number 78. Augustus Sinclair was originally modeled after actor Desi Arnaz of I Love Lucy fame. Number 79. At one point, the main big sister was revealed to be Eleanor Lamb, but this was scrapped for two reasons. One, it was way too predictable, and two, by the time the twist occurred, Eleanor would have done way too many terrible things for her to be a redeemable character. Number 80. Eleanor Lamb's full name is Eleanor Althea Lamb. This can be heard in an audio message that was cut from the final game. Some believe her middle name is a reference to the poem To Althea from Prison. Number 81. Another big story change involved the big sister. They had planned for the same big sister to continually chase down the player, be defeated, and flee, only to have some story significance later. However, the developers felt as though this cheapened the interactions with her, since players would know they were never going to really defeat her. Number 82. A cut audio message reveals that Eleanor's biological father is actually Subject Delta, but it's not the usual forbidden romance story with him and Sophia Lamb. The audio message states that Delta was basically a reluctant sperm donor, with Sophia acquiring his DNA at random. Yeah, definitely not romantic at all. Number 83. The big sister's sound effects were made using bird and hyena noises, as well as the sound designer's wife doing her patented dolphin impression. Number 84. Bridget Tenenbaum and the baby Janes in BioShock 2 are both modeled after actress Geraldine Fitzgerald. Number 85. Gil Alexander was referred to behind the scenes as the Guilt Navigator, which is a reference to the Guild Navigator from the classic sci-fi novel Dune. Number 86. Senator Cohen was going to return in BioShock 2 as a 20-foot tall frightened bunny monster, but those plans were scrapped, which is good for our sleep. No nightmares, please. Number 87. Before they were called Rumblers, possible names for the new Big Daddies were Howie, Bombers, and Professor Shoot Bombs? Number 88. Who killed Laura Palmer? Well, you did if you played BioShock 2. Twin Peaks' Cheryl Lee accidentally ended up in the recording studio instead of actress Cheryl Lee Ralph, who plays Grace. So they had her record some Splicer lines while there. Number 89. Many of the Splicer names are references to pop culture of the mid-20th century. For example, Baby Jane is named for the 1962 film Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Rosebud is named after Charles Foster Kane's last words in the 1941 film Citizen Kane, and Lady Smith alludes to the brand of revolver were designed for women in the 1900s, the Smith & Wesson Lady Smith. Number 90. To promote the release of BioShock 2, an alternate reality game was launched called There's Something in the Sea. The marketing campaign revolved around Mark Meltzer's investigation of Rapture, beginning with the abduction of little girls around the Atlantic Ocean, including Meltzer's own daughter Cindy. Number 91. There was no intention of having Mark Meltzer appear in the actual BioShock 2 game, but the ARG was so popular that the developers decided to include his character in the storyline. Number 92. Despite the fact that the little sister with Mark is not blonde, creative director Jordan Thomas confirmed that it is his daughter Cindy. Apparently, they caught the hair error too late to do anything about it and humbly ask for your forgiveness. Number 93. Over 26 character concepts were originally made for BioShock 2's multiplayer mode, but only a handful were picked that best represented the population of Rapture. Number 94. In order to keep players engaged in a fully controllable, visually based story moment, they had to construct scenes with Rube Goldberg-esque designs. That way, players would know exactly where to look, when, and have the attention span to do so. Number 95. The numbers 1540 are the code used to open the first locked door in the game, which is the reverse of Looking Glass's go-to code 451. Number 96. BioShock 2 carries on the legacy of Pac-Man references. Some of the names that can be assigned to security bots are Pinky, Blinky, and Clyde. Number 97. The first level the team worked on was Dionysus Park. The last one they finished was Adonis Luxury Resort. Number 98. If you look close, the tail of the crashed airplane from BioShock 1 can actually be seen in Adonis Luxury Resort on a ridge in the distance. Number 99. The flooding sequence at the top of the game was originally just a proof of concept that was going to be removed from the final game, but it felt like too much of an iconic moment to be excluded. Number 100. The audio diary by Jackie Rodkins is a reference to Jake Rodkin of the Idle Thumbs podcast. BioShock 2's level designer Steve Gaynor is a frequent guest of the show, and he slipped it in the game as a nod to Jake. Number 101. Gaynor also put in a nod to his girlfriend Rachel Jacks. In the luxury resort, you can find a diary by Rochelle Jacques, who swims at the Adonis while her husband Stephen stays home and listens to radio serials. This is art imitating real life. The real Rachel works out, while Steve stays home and plays video games. Number 102. The Fishbowl Diner at Pauper's Drop was based on Edward Hopper's famous painting Nighthawks. Jordan Thomas liked the imagery of a lonely man inside a diner. Number 103. The X-ray in Inner Persephone is a scan of the environment artist Hogarth de la Plante after a hang gliding accident. Number 104. The mugshots in the security booth in Inner Persephone are all developers. Creators love their cameos. Number 105. BioShock was the game that inspired the phrase ludonarrative dissonance. Coined by Clint Hocking, the phrase refers to a disconnect between the morals of a game and its gameplay. He criticized BioShock's gameplay, which rewards selfishness, not not aligning with this narrative, which promotes selflessness. Number 106. Fulbright's 2016 game, Gone Home, takes place in the same universe as BioShock. Want some proof of that? The airline that protagonist Katie takes, Apollo Worldwide Airways, is the same one that Jack takes in BioShock. Also, a game that can be found in Gone Home, Super Spitfire, is a sequel to the Spitfire game from Minerva's Den. According to Steve Gaynor, Charles Milton Porter probably escaped Rapture and made it back to the surface, where he probably started a tech company. Number 107. 2016's Firewatch takes place in the same universe as well. How do we know? Well, in Firewatch, you can find a book by Terrence L. Greenbrier called The Accidental Savior. Greenbrier is Katie's father from Gone Home. Therefore, everything is connected! Thanks for watching 107 Facts about BioShock. Which character is your favorite? Comment below and let us know. We have new videos dropping every week, so let us know what game you want us to cover next. And if you like getting more from your games, would you kindly subscribe to the Leaderboard, where we help you game smarter.